Truly, God is good. And He has purpose in all that He does. To give Him that glory, to give Him that honor, so that He can be reflected in this world to those around us. And it's interesting that God just put that out there like that, because we're going to talk about Lot today.
All right.
We finished with Abraham last week. Father Abraham.
Yes, yes.
We got the nuggets and we gleaned from his life.
Yes,
From the ups, from the downs,
yes.
From his strong moments to his weak moments.
Yes.
We learned from Mother Sarah.
Yes, all of that.
We learned from what she did. We learned from what she didn't do.
Yes.
We learned
Yes.
because of Abraham's purpose to honor God in all that he did. Even him, God, he could use even his weak moment, even his moment of weakness, to further kingdom principle, to further his purpose and his plan, to get from the garden to the cross. Amen. Today we're talking about Lot, good old brother Lot. We know about Lot. We've read about Lot over and over again. We know of Lot's association with Abraham. He was Abraham's nephew, the brother of Abraham's son. And when Abraham's, the son of Abraham's brother. Thank y'all.
We know what you mean.
Thank you. Gotta get it right. But we know that when Abraham's brother passed away, Abraham basically became the father figure to Lot. So that even when God told Abram at the time, when God spoke and said, "Get thee out of the land of thy fathers and go to where I tell you," Lot said, you ain't leaving me here. I got to go. I got to go with you. I'm going with you. And so in the accumulation of between the two of them, of the substance and the sustenance that they had, between the cattle that they had, and they had traveled so far, and the land couldn't support the two of them. Because what both of them had was so great, so much so that they had to separate. We know that Abram, at that point, Abram still did not have an heir, a blood relative heir. So Lot was basically the heir apparent. But when it became apparent that they could not inhabit the same land, when they could not, rather than it wouldn't even have made sense for Abram to say, "You just blend in and become part of our house," because the land still couldn't support them. So they had to separate. Abram told Lot, "Choose where you're going to go, and I'll take whatever's left." Lot chose the green plains, Sodom and Gomorrah. He pitched his tent towards Sodom. And Abraham went his way. We know Abraham's story and how God blessed him and gave him that land for his seed to have a place to be planted. A seed is no good without land. And so God set all of that up. But we know that Lot went towards Sodom, went into Sodom, and he pitched his tent towards Sodom. And so we're going to talk about Lot today. Think about Lot, though. Think about Lot. He and Abraham and Abram at the time, they had so much substance, so much cattle between the two of them. Because Abram, he's been getting blessed on the way. Because Pharaoh gave him sheep, gave him goats, gave him he-asses and she-asses, and all these grazing animals. And Lot, he had quite a bit himself, so that the land couldn't even take. So Lot goes into Sodom with quite a bit. He goes into Sodom with quite a bit. Think now, remember that Lot grew up in the household of Abraham. Everyone in the household of Abraham got exposed to God. Mm-hmm. To the point where the Egyptian servant, Hagar, was having interaction with God himself. was having interaction with pre-incarnate Christ, whereas when she ran away, the angel of the Lord had to appear to her. And she was able to recognize and say, Lord, you have seen me. She was able to recognize. So anybody who came into the house of Abraham experienced God.
Yes.
Because that's how Abraham was. You didn't come into his house, you didn't come into his camp and not experience the living God. He was having conversation with God on a regular basis. God would initiate with Abraham. So you didn't come into that household. You didn't come into that camp. You weren't a part of that camp without experiencing God, without being taught about God. So Lot grew up in this atmosphere. Lot grew up in this atmosphere. And when Abraham decided to leave, well, decided to obey God and leave, Lot said, I'm going with you. And the moment they had to separate, Lot chose Sodom and Gomorrah. He went in with a lot, came out with almost nothing. Came out with almost nothing. He came out with the net $2. That's not even, he left with a wife and $2. He left out of Sodom with a wife and $2. But his ultimate, what he ended up getting to leave with, $2. How does Lot go from having so much substance that he and Abraham can't exist on the same land because it can't hold them to now he's leaving $2. That's a lot to lose. That's a lot to leave behind. How did Lot get to that spot? How did Lot get to that place? We know that in Genesis chapter 19, verses 1 through 3, this is the account where the angels themselves, the two angels that were part of the group that went to visit Abram at the time, and one of the three was the angel of the Lord himself, and he stayed with Abram, and that's who Abram was negotiating with regarding. And the other two pressed on and went to Sodom to visit Lot. And Lot, as he saw them coming, verses 1 through 3, he bowed down before them. He recognized something about them. And he bade them come into his house. Don't try to stay in these streets, because bad things can happen. Bad things. There's something bad, really bad, that can happen to you if you stay out in these streets. So I beg you, come to my house, and I will wash your feet, and you shall rise up early and go on your way. And as a neighbor, we will abide in the street. But he pressed them greatly, so they turned in and they came in and they entered into his house. They came in and stayed with him. Lot's impact, Lot's effect on that city was a whole lot different than what it would have been had Abram gone there. Had Abram chosen. Because Abram can go into a land, deceive the Pharaoh, and God still moved. He moved on Sarah's behalf. Abram could go in and deceive King Abimelech, but God can still go in and speak on Abraham's behalf and say he's a prophet. Because Abram's life was all about moments of weakness notwithstanding. Abram's life was about presenting people with who God is. Everyone in his camp got to experience God in some way. Lot grew up in that, but is apparent that it didn't rub off. It didn't sink in the same way. Because even Hagar could get to the point where she's running away and she can recognize the Lord and say, Lord, thou seest me. Lord, you heard me. But Lot, as he goes into Sodom and Gomorrah, there's something that goes down. Because he's telling them, you can come in and I'll wash your feet and you stay. And even early in the morning, you should go on your way. Don't stay here because something bad. I can't do anything. I can't do anything. Should they press? Should they come in and try? And that's basically what he's saying by telling them to leave on early in the morning. So they come in, verse 4. But before they lay down, the men of the city, even the men of Sodom, compassed around the house. They circled around the house. And they, verse 5, it says, and they called out to Lot and said unto him, where are the men which came in to thee tonight? Bring them out so that we may know them. Bring them out so that we may know them. So they're in Lot's house. They don't even respect the fact that they're in Lot's house. He hasn't garnered that level of respect. He hasn't presented God in a way that would make them say, we shouldn't mess with him. We shouldn't mess with him. But what is going on with Lot hasn't been enough to prevent them from coming after what's inside his house. The ones that are inside his house. And verse 6, it says, and Lot went to the door unto them and shut the door after him. So he comes out and he closes the door behind him. And Lot says, I pray you, brethren, do not so wickedly. Do not so wickedly. Don't do this bad thing that you want to do. Don't do this wicked thing that you want to do. And it's easy to, with hindsight 2020, being able to look back and say, well, Lot, you should have, but that's not what this is about. This is about looking and seeing how a man raised in Abraham's camp, having heard and learned and seen everything that God did, when confronted with evil, doesn't present God. All he said was, don't do this wicked thing. All he says is, the thing that you've been doing this whole time that I've been here, don't do it this time. Not in God's name. Not because what you're doing is evil in the eyes of the Father. Not in the eyes of my God. Because he wasn't in a place where he could call him Father yet. But don't do this. Don't do this evil thing in the sight of God. And it's not enough. He goes on to present his resolution to the situation, which by any standard is a really not. Really? You're gonna offer up your daughters to these wicked men? Okay, I see that you're trying to protect these men that you see, but you're trying to do them of your own, and you're trying to sacrifice your own family members to protect these men. You're trying to do it of your own and of your own understanding and of your own power.
Yes, that's good.
Instead of presenting God.
Yes.
Instead of presenting God, which only made them more angry. Lot, you know how we are. You know what we do. Don't try to give us an alternative.
You know we do.
You know what we... Don't try to give us an alternative.
Yeah. You know we like it.
And the thing is, verse 9, and they said, stand back. And they said again, this one fellow came in to sojourn, and he will needs be a judge. Now we'll deal worse with thee than we would with them. Basically, they're saying, oh, now you want to speak up? You've been here this whole time. You know how we do. You know who we are. You haven't said anything this whole time. But now these two men come in, and now you want to step up and be somebody? Now you want to step up? And he's stepping up, and he's presenting himself, and he's presenting his own resolutions and solutions to the situation, his own diversion, rather than saying, God says no.
Never wants God. Yes.
Never wants
Yes.
God.
Yes. Yes.
Now he's trying to present his own.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not working. Epic failure. So, excuse me. Continuing in that verse 9. And they pressed sore upon the man, even Lot. And they came near to break the door. But the men put forth their hand and they pulled Lot back into the house. And they shut the door and they smote the men that were at the door with blindness, both small and great, both young and old. That's what they're saying. There were young men out there, there were old men out there, which lets you know this was a culture of wickedness. A culture of wickedness. Not just a culture of wickedness, a culture of flaunted wickedness. It wasn't hidden, it wasn't underground, it was over and in your face. It was, this is who we are and this is what we do. Back in the day, we used to say, like it or lump it. That's what they're saying. You know who we are. You know how we do. Don't stand in the way. Don't present your alternatives. But those men came in and said, no. They pulled Lot in, smoked the men blind. And they were right there at Lot's door. There's no smoked them blind to where they just had trouble finding the doors. They wearied themselves to find the door. So they kept pressing, even though they were blind. They kept trying to where they wearied themselves trying to find them. That's how pervasive the wickedness was in this city. That they wore themselves out, still trying to find. Can't see nothing. What they didn't, they weren't deterred. Verse 12, and the men said unto Lot, hast thou any here besides sons-in-laws and thy sons and thy daughters and whatsoever thou hast in the city, bring them out of this place. Notice what he says, and whatsoever thou hast in the city, and whatsoever thou hast in the city. His substance. But all Lot came out with was his 2 daughters. Lot, even though we know later on in the word, it says Lot was a righteous man, Lot went into Sodom and Gomorrah and became backslidden. Lot went into Sodom and Gomorrah and became backslidden. So that his testimony, so that the testimony of the Lord was compromised, was weakened, was ruined, if you will. That's why when he was confronted with that situation, he wasn't compelled to present God. The best he could do in that situation. See, he couldn't say, anointing fall on me. Even if he had stood in there and called upon the name of the Lord, that would have been better than to just say, what you're doing is wrong. What you're doing is wicked. Because this was apparently the first time that he had spoken up. This was apparently the first time that he had expressed any, I won't say discontentment, but any indignation, any inclination to let them know that what they're doing is wicked. So Lot's life, the saying, the walk without the talk is a mystery. You live your life before people without telling them why you do what you do. they're going to think you're just a good person. It's going to be a mystery. The talk without the walk is hypocrisy. Because if you talk about being a believer and all this, but you're not doing it, that's hypocrisy. And Lot was somewhere in between those two. He was somewhere in between those two. Because he had the walk. He had the walk. And he wasn't declaring it. But somewhere along the way, he did declare. But it wasn't, the talk wasn't married with the walk.
That's good.
The talk wasn't married with the walk. So when the talk goes forward without the walk, then you try to walk the walk and the talk at the same time, it's rendered useless. It is powerless. It's powerless. We don't ever want to render the word powerless. We don't ever want to do that. So the angels, the two men, they tell him, gather up your sons-in-law and thy sons and thy daughters. Your sons-in-law, your sons, and your daughters. And whatsoever thou hast in the city, and bring them out of this place. Remember Abram's bargain with God? And how he got it down to 10 people? So now, think about it. You got Lot. You got Lot's wife. You have his 2 daughters who knew not a man. You got his 2 daughters who were married. You got their 2 husbands. That's 8. Then you have his sons. They said sons. So there's at least 2. There should have been enough to save the city. There should have been enough to save the city. And that's at the bare minimum. We know that he had specifically 2 daughters who did not know a man because he was going to present them. But here but the 2 men tell him, your sons, your son-in-law, and thy sons, and thy daughters. So there's at least, there should have been at least 10 people. Sodom and Gomorrah, and I'm sure that's what Abram was thinking. That's what Abram was thinking when he was negotiating with God. Well, I know how I raised Lot. I know what I taught Lot. I know what I taught Lot to be. I know the atmosphere. I know how I raised him. So, if you remember back when God is speaking of Abraham, he says, because I know that he will command his house. And he will teach them. And they will do justice and follow my judgments. He had that confidence in Abraham. He knew because Abraham had demonstrated. See, Abraham had that same confidence in Lot. That I'll say a minimum confidence in Lot because he worked from 50 down to 10. He worked it all the way down to, well, at least I know, I'm pretty sure, I'm fairly certain that he would have taught his family. That he would have taught and led and instructed his family the way that I taught him.
Yeah.
And that, so, because Abram knows, he knows from his life, he knows that if Hagar, if the Lord can speak to Hagar, change her attitude and send her back to where she's willing to behave properly now, so that Sarah doesn't have to send her out and deal harshly with her. so that if this Egyptian servant can be a part of my household and experience God, so that the servant, so that the son that my servant bore can still go forward under the anointing of the promise that God gave me, and he too will become a great nation, then Lot, who grew up in my house, certainly has grown, has multiplied himself as I multiplied him through myself through him. Certainly, there are 10. Certainly, there are 10. But Lot got into Sodom and Gomorrah and did not. I'll just say did not. Had he done as was expected of him? Had he done as he had been taught, trained, reared to do as a young man in Abram's house? If Abram can look over his camp, pick out 318 men, and go defeat the army of 4 cities, then he had every right to believe and expect that Lot would go out in same manner, in like manner. But Lot did not. Lot went in and he blended in. He became a part of the landscape. He didn't, it's not even that he went in and began practicing what they were doing. But he went in and he blended in. It wasn't a requirement that he go in preaching the wickedness, telling them what they're doing was wicked, but he didn't even give them the alternative to follow God. He didn't even present God in a manner to where they could say, no, we reject. He didn't even go in and present God in that manner. You got to give them the opportunity. That is why the outcry of their sin was so great. That's why the two angels, the 2 men, went into the city to give them opportunity, to receive. But they were so aggressive, so ostentatious, so audacious, so bold, so aggressive with their sin, that they let the men know clearly, we're not interested. What we are interested in is our self-indulgence, cater to our flesh. We're not interested in hearing any truth. We're not interested in any alternative. We're interested in what makes us, what gives us that moment of pleasure. Verse 14 says, and Lot went out and spake unto his sons-in-law, which buried his daughters, and said, up, get out of this place, for the Lord will destroy this city. Letting them know that the Lord has said that he's going to destroy this city. But he seemed as one that mocked unto his sons-in-law. Mocked. The Hebrew word, sakah, T-S-A-C-H-A-A, sakah. And it is one who deserves to be laughed at. One who deserves to be laughed at. This is not the same definition when we hear that God is not mocked. It's not the same definition. Because that's saying that God will not be, you can't get over on God. You're not going to fool God. You're not going to trick God. You're not going to con God. Here, Lot seemed as one who deserved to be laughed at. A joke indeed. Because he's warning them that the Lord will destroy this city. Why? Why, when he now comes presenting what the Lord has said? Why now is he presented as a joke? Because he hasn't lived it. There was compromise. There was Again, there was a walk without the talk, and in other places there was talk without the walk. The backslidden state. So that now, when the rubber's about to meet the road, when things are getting, it's getting ready to go down, and there is destruction pending upon this city, and now you want to be serious about God? You haven't lived it in your household. You haven't presented it. You haven't grown. You haven't taught. You haven't exhorted. You haven't imparted it. The gospel. You haven't imparted that in your own household to the point where your own relatives, daughters, sons-in-laws, now that you're worthy to be laughed at because now you want to come present God. Mm-hmm. Now you want to be all serious about God. Mm-hmm. Now what the Lord says matters. Mm-hmm. Now you want us to believe this God that now he's supposed to have power. Now we're supposed to believe what you're saying. Like, oh, yeah, okay, all right. They mocked him. Verse 15, it says, in the morning, and when the morning arose, and the angels hastened Lot, saying, arise, take thy wife and thy 2 daughters, which are here, lest thou be consumed in the iniquity of the city. Check out verse 16. And while he lingered, how can you expect not to be mocked when you go present the Lord and you haven't lived it, you haven't taught it in an effective manner, you haven't exemplified it, him, not it, you haven't exemplified him in an effective manner. And now the angel of the Lord has spoken, you've warned people, you've been laughed at, they're warning you to get out now, and you are lingering. And while he lingered, the men laid upon his hand and the hand of his wife and upon the hand of his 2 daughters, the Lord being merciful unto him, and they brought them forth and set them without the city. How do you go from being raised in Abraham's camp, in the place where an Egyptian servant will hear from God, and the Egyptian servant's son, who was of a factor of the flesh and not a product of the promise, but God's anointing is so strong on Abram that this person is still going to go on and become a great nation. How are you raised in that same manner? But when you get out on road and on your own, separate by yourself, you are not living that before those who are around you. How is that? Did you not see? Did you not learn from how Abraham benefited and was blessed by God? You were right there the whole time. Something didn't sink in. Something didn't lock in. So they've been warned. And the angels hastened. He said, get up, go on, get out, hurry up. Take your daughters and your wife, lest you be consumed. And they're lingering. They're in the closet. Well, let me see. Do I want to take this? No, I don't want to take that. Do I want to take this right here? No, I don't know. It may not fit in the suitcase. What do I want to take? Let me see. Where are we going? No sense of urgency. No sense of urgency. No wonder he was laughed at. No wonder he was laughed at. He himself didn't have that sense of urgency. He himself. He was in that state. He was in that state. And while he lingered, the men laid hold upon his hand, and upon the hand of his wife, and upon the hand of his 2 daughters. The Lord being merciful unto him. Because God could have said, they could have easily said, all right, you want to hang? You want to stay with them? You know what? You can go down with them. You can go with them. You can go with them. But they said, no. God promised Abraham. God promised Abraham. And we can't do this until you go. This got to happen. It's going to happen. It's going to go down. And it's got to go down now. It's got to go down soon. We got it all ready to go. Get out so we can get this thing done. Get out so we can get this thing done. And they just lingered. Taking their time. So they hit and sent them out of the city to make sure. And it came to pass when they brought them forth, verse 17, brought them forth abroad, he said, escape for thy life, and look not behind thee. Escape for thy life, look not behind thee, neither stay thou in all the plain, escape to the mountain, lest thou be consumed. Look not behind thee. Don't look back. Specific instruction. Don't look back. Escape thou. Escape to the mountain, lest thou be consumed. And Lot said unto them, Oh, not so, my Lord. Behold now thy servant hath found grace in thy sight, and thou hast magnified thy mercy, which thou hast showed unto me in saving my life. I cannot escape to the mountain, lest some evil take me and I die. They're telling you, get up to that mountain and you'll be safe. But he's saying, oh, I can't make it to the mountain, or something's going to happen to me and I'm going to die. He's saying, get out of here and you will live. Go up to the mountain and you will die. And you won't die. Stay here, die. Get up to the mountain and live. And he's negotiating that. Negotiating that. I cannot make it to the mountain unless some evil take me and I die. If I'm that angel, I'm like, oh, come on, man. Come on, man. And in verse 20, behold now, this city is near to flee unto, and it is a little one. Oh, let me escape thither. Is it not a little one? And my soul shall live. Zoar. Remember, Sodom and Gomorrah was a pentapolis. There were 5 cities. Zoar was one of those 5 cities. Zoar was on the schedule to get destroyed. Zoar was on the list. Zoar was on the list. So he negotiates that. Verse 21, and he said unto him, see, I have accepted thee concerning this thing, also that I will not overthrow the city for the which thou hast spoken. Haste thee, escape. Hurry up and get out of here. Escape thee, for I cannot do anything until thou come thither. Therefore the name of the city was called Zoar, and the sun was risen upon the earth when Lot entered into Zoar. Get out and go up to the mountain. Well, I don't want to go to the mountain. Something bad could happen to me up there. You didn't think about what bad could happen to you when you were choosing all the different places where you could live. You didn't think what bad could happen to you when you chose to live in Sodom, when you pitched your tent towards Sodom, and you knew Sodom and Gomorrah wasn't a secret. The way they lived, there was generations of wickedness going on there. You didn't think about that, your life, you didn't think about the impact then. When you moved in there, when you began to compromise, when you began to get into your backslidden state, and then when the angels come and they tell you get out and you want to linger in the city, you scared of what might happen up in the mountain. When the angel has said, go to that place. How have you gotten to a place where the angel can speak to you and you regard it not? Backslidden. backslidden. Not to where you are regarding the power, regarding the seriousness of what God has said and done. You allow yourself to get in a dangerous place when the Lord speaks and your reply is but. When the word is presented and the truth is presented and your reply is but. You're in a dangerous place.
Yeah. Yes.
Because that's basically what he's saying. So they get out. He went in with so much. Came out with to this point, came out with his wife and his 2 daughters. They have specific instruction. Do not look back. Verse 24. And the Lord rained upon Sodom and Gomorrah brimstone and fire from the Lord out of heaven. And he overthrew those cities and all the plain and all the inhabitants of the cities, that which grew upon the ground. Verse 26. But his wife looked back from behind him, and she became a pillar of salt. Disobedience. There was a direct command to not look back. A direct command to not look back. And as they were fleeing out, instead of being right next to Lot, where she should have been as they're going out, she's lingering back behind him. To where if she starts looking back, he can say, no, don't. They said, don't look back. But she lingered back behind him so that she could sneak her look. And it's the look back. You were told not to look. Why would you look back? What reason is there to look back? Because there was some fondness. There was something that you were leaving behind that was close to you. It might have been her children. It might have been the fact that she knew that they came in with so much and were leaving with so little. Might have been that. It might have been because Lot himself was backslidden. It might have been she missed the city. She's backslidden. So for whatever reason, when the angels gave specific command, look not behind me, something pulled her heart to look back. Whether it was lost children, whether it was the loss of a substance that they came in with, whether it was an affection or an affinity for the wickedness that went on in the city, something turned her back for her last act. There was no, oops, give me another shot. And she became a pillar of salt. It says Abraham got up early in the morning, verse 27. And Abraham got up early in the morning to the place where he stood before the Lord. And he looked toward Sodom and Gomorrah and toward all the land of the plain, and beheld, and lo, the smoke of the country went up as the smoke of a furnace. And it came to pass when God destroyed the cities of the plain that God remembered Abraham, and he sent Lot out of the midst of the overthrow. When he overthrew the cities in which Lot dwelt. Abraham got up and he saw the smoke. And that which he had hoped for. He knew that God would not destroy Abraham. He knew that God wouldn't destroy Lot. out to destroy the righteous. He wasn't. So he knew that at the bare minimum, Lot and whomever, the no more than 9 that Lot was leaving out with, not knowing that it would be just the 2 that he was leaving with. But he knew that God wouldn't destroy those who were still righteous. So in Lot's backslidden state, he was still spared. In Lot's backslidden state, he was still able to negotiate, to not have to go all the way up to the mountain, to the place where he feared something bad would happen to him. So, but even in his backslidden state, even where he was considered enough, righteous enough to where God would spare his life. He's married to the backslider. Yeah, that's where Lot got his mercy, and that he by all rights, he very well could have been destroyed, because even when the warning went forward, even when it was almost time for everything to go down, and he's trying to stay, he's lingering in that place, knowing that it is slated for destruction, and he's lingering. He's trying to make it about his time frame. Lingering. He's trying to, but God has given him specific instruction. The angels have spoken that God is going to destroy this place. You get your people, you and all of those who are going to go with you, get up to the mountain. Because if you stay here, you will die. If you try to stay here, you will die. But God wouldn't even let his stubbornness, God wouldn't even let his lingering put him in jeopardy. So the angels, they took everybody by the hand, all of those who were going to go, took them by the, and they walked them out of the city. They might even give him, extra boot at the end, just to hurry him along. But this is the epitome of God's grace. This is the epitome of God's mercy. But don't tempt God's mercy. Don't play with his grace. Lot's wife learned a hard lesson. Don't look back means don't look back. It doesn't mean don't let somebody catch you looking back. It means don't look back. You need to be in your rightful place. She should have been walking next to her husband. But she lingered behind to do what it was in her heart that she felt she needed to do. Came in with great sustenance, left with 2 daughters. Came in with at least 10. Doesn't say what he went in with as far as sons-in-law. But if he went in and those daughters who were married were not wed then, and they got married in that time to the men of Sodom and Gomorrah, therein doth lie a heart connection. His compromise, his backslidden state, why his own daughters wouldn't go with him, why they stayed with their husbands. God is serious about how he wants us to live. He is serious about how he wants us to live. We as believers have no excuse. He gives us his specific commands, and he wants us to do things a certain way. Not because he's a control freak, but because he's doing it for our good. He's doing it to strengthen us. He allows the hard times to come in our life so that we can be strengthened. He allows, it's Psalm 23. He'll lead us. He'll make us lie down in green pastures. He'll lead us beside still waters. But he will be with us through the valley of the shadow of death, because he's preparing for us a table in the presence of our enemies. And if at any point we choose to deviate or to not listen when he says do something, we're putting ourselves in danger. He's not putting us in danger. Even through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil because you're with me. 365 times in the Bible, 366 in some because there's one for leap year. It says, the word says, do not fear. God is clearly letting us know that we need not fear. Even through the valley of the shadow of death, however many days it takes us to get through. There's a verse for each day, however long we're in there. And if we're in there for more than 365, 366, you just start from the beginning.
Yeah.
Start over. But God is not playing about how he wants us to live. Because it's so important because it touches and affects the lives of those around us. Because if Abram can go in and deceive a king, and God comes to that king and says, you're a dead man. You're a dead man because you took somebody's wife. This man is a prophet. Yeah, he didn't even highlight the fact, yeah, he lied, he cheated, he deceived you. That wasn't God's concern. His concern was letting Abimelech know who he was dealing with. And you will deal with him accordingly. So don't get caught up. Don't get caught up. We can't get caught up in our failures. We gotta get back up. We gotta get back up.
Yes.
We gotta get back up. We gotta turn right back around to God.
That's right.
We gotta turn right back around.
That's it.
Get up and don't
Turn
wallow
right
in it.
back around.
It's not for us to wallow in. God doesn't want us or need us to beat ourselves up for it, because the enemy's he's gonna take plenty of time to try to do
Yeah,
that.
do a good job, man. He does.
God's just waiting for us to get up, turn back to him, so that he can move us to where he's taking us to. But just remember for us, our whole thing is that every time Abraham spoke to God, heard from God, he built an altar.
Yes.
To remember. Every time he heard from God, he declared in the manner which he heard. God will see to it. Abram's thing was, even when God had given him the most difficult command, instruction of his life to that point, sacrifice your son. He categorized it as worship. We're going up to worship and we'll be back. We're going up to worship and we'll be back because God's going to see to it. If we go into any and every situation in that manner, we won't end up like Lot ended up. We won't end up like Lot ended up, going into a place with so much, but because he didn't stay focused on God, he left with so little. Left with so little. That's what we finish our whole worship today with. Guess what? I'm grateful. I'm grateful that God is the same God today that he was for Abraham. God is the same God today that he was for Lot. God is the same God.
Same God forevermore.
And I'm
Yes.
grateful.
Yes.
I'm grateful. Amen.
Amen.